You're listening to a TGM production. Hello and welcome to my brand new comedy podcast, Comedy Breakdown. This is the podcast where I, comedian Tom Mason, break down my comedy journey. If you're watching this over on Tom's Comedy Club or on Spotify, you'll notice two things throughout the history of this podcast. One, some episodes where I feel like the chat will be longer than 25 minutes will be audio only, such as our introductional episode, but some episodes that will be 25 minutes or less will be visual with a camera. Even though on YouTube and on Spotify you can watch the audio waveform. The reason is, and don't quote me on this at all, but there's a law in the EU law, that states that cameras can't record over a certain length of time, and the camera overheats after 25 minutes. Now, the audio recorder can record for as long as it can, so with the camera it'll overheat and it'll die. But I won't notice because I'm recording, and due to some other factors with the camera, which I'm going to be getting fixed again, where I've not got the monitor working just yet for the second time, so it's hard to see if it's cut out on me. So I thought for the first episode of Comedy Breakdown, I will just talk audio only, because I feel like that's the best way to start off this podcast. If I was recording, I could record the visual version on my computer, but when I did that in the past, I used to do it yonks ago, it just wouldn't have looked as good. So, in our first episode of Comedy Breakdown, we're going to talk about my life in comedy, such as the stand-up work in progress, as we nearly drop a stand-up work in progress shows that I am currently doing. We're doing stand-up live on Twitch, and my comedy characters. So, let's start off with doing comedy live on Twitch and my origins. Well, due to personal situation of location of living, I'm not able to get out and about to comedy gigs, in a sense of we haven't got a local comedy venue, right? So a venue that does weekly comedy and all that jazz. We haven't got one of them in my local area, and the nearest place is like 2, 3, 4 hours away. It's like not viable to get there, right? And I don't drive, so it's a logistical nightmare, if you will. So what happens is I sort of get to the feeling that it becomes slightly more, what's the word I want to use, more complicated to do it. So I thought, when I wanted to start doing stand-up, I thought, well, what I'll do is I will attempt to do stand-up comedy on YouTube, right? Because I saw when I think it was near the beginning of the visualised journey of the BBC New Comedy Awards, that they had a category for online stuff, because obviously online comedy is getting really, really big these days. So they had a sort of category for online comedy. So I thought, well, yeah, that's fine. And every year now I submit to the BBC New Comedy Awards. Never get on, and never get any emails saying you ever made it, which I think they should email everyone back going, they should so they have the selected ones, but you should then have an automated email to everyone that didn't make it, to let you know you haven't made it, and to let you know that we really enjoy it, we really liked, we wish you all the best, and hope you can resubmit next year, or whatever. That would be a really nice thing to do, really. I think that should be how they do it. But sadly, that isn't how it works. So it means that you're in a little bit of limbo of not really knowing whether or not you're any good in that sense. So because I started doing the comedy on YouTube, it gave me the sort of freedom to do more comedy on YouTube, and gave me the feeling that whilst I'm learning the skills of comedy, then I can sort of adapt that ability and go, right, yeah, that's an excellent idea. My comedy's going quite well. I quite like it, and I think that it's going to be good. And that was when I was it wasn't 18 yet, because I wanted to be in the list of people that started stand-up at a young age. So I technically started stand-up at a young age. And from then on, from the Googles, I found that it meant that I was a comedian, if you will. Now, what I discovered was I went on and did it, and so I did it quite a few times. And years ago, because I run 33 YouTube channels, I had a YouTube channel that was called Tom Mason Games, and then rebranded to the Who Gamer eventually, because I'm a massive Doctor Who fan, if you don't already know. And at that point, I got to the extent of, right, okay, that's excellent idea, excellent, I'll do that. So I did some live streams, I did 2, didn't really work. So then I left it a few years, and I started watching Ben Rufus Green's Washing Up Club, which is on Twitch and YouTube, he's an actor, got a comedy actor, is I think the category he enters himself into, but I think he could do drama if he really put his mind to it. And so it was really good, and I really liked it. I thought, he agreed I should do streaming, and I was looking at other ideas for Saturday morning based shows, and just one day I thought, no, I'll do something called the Brainstormers. So I created a format called the Brainstormers that when I came to edit it for YouTube, I cancelled the Brainstormers and turned it into stand-up, because that's when I was performing anyway. So I started performing live stand-up on Twitch, and it was, for me, it was less of a worry of that camera's going to die, so there was less of that, and I could talk for a lot longer, and it just felt really nice to get the feeling of, I'm live, I'm not live in a room and you don't get immediate responses, that's the downside, but I'm doing this thing live and it's happening live, and I can see it on the other monitor, because I've got 3 monitors. Obviously you've got your computer screen, because it's an Apple computer. I've got the computer screen that is a computer, really. I've got 2 monitors, and one monitor is playing the thing. I'm going, wow, I'm doing this live, and then I get to play about with the thing and go, that didn't work, I need to cut that out for the edited version for YouTube, for the YouTube channel Tom's Comedy Club. And it just added to the enhancement of that. I was really enjoying this world of stand-up, and I thought, oh, it's brilliant. And over the last few years, I've interviewed loads of comedians of different varieties for Joking Apart, my comedy podcast that's in a similar vein to Comedian with Stuart Goldsmith, who I would love to interview. And then my other podcast in the comedy world, it's not a podcast, my other comedy series, which is interviews, is One Comedian, 8 Questions, where I spin a wheel and ask them a random question, but all in aid to promote their Edinburgh Fringe show, based on the idea of Random 8 from the British Comedy Guide website, which I just think was a really excellent thing, but I learned a lot more about comedy from these people. And recently, I followed this newer comedian. I've followed her journey for quite a while, and I'm so excited that I was there in the early days of this person's career, and I've never done that before. She's called Kathy Rivette. Anyway, so she went on the BBC New Comedy Awards. She smashed it, and she smashed it at the total final, I think. Anyway, so she smashed it, and it was incredible, right? But she's then doing a work in progress at Machynlleth Comedy Festival, and I'm thinking, I want to do a work in progress. I want to create a show, and I don't know, months earlier, had this idea for a show called, perfect title for a stand-up show. It's called Music We Didn't Ask For. And I thought, incredible. And I never thought about it again, but then when I thought, I want to do this work in progress, I went onto the Comedians Facebook group, which is the Stuart Goldsmith podcast, but it's on Facebook. It's a Facebook group where comedians can share their favourite up-and-coming stand-up shows on YouTube. From YouTube, they can ask questions, and also there's a lot of industry people in there, a lot of comedians. And so I asked a question about doing a work in progress on Twitch and how it works and how I should like sort of explain that it's work in progress. And I did it, and I got an excellent answer from the comedian Adele Cliff, who I then eventually went on to interview, and she gave me this insight of going, well, I need you to write the work in progress and a development, and I did the work in progress, and it was brilliant. I loved it. I loved what I wrote. I loved what I improvised. And now what I need to do is watch it back and write down all the bits that were improvised to make it scripted. Then I think to myself, well, what do I do now? And then I heard you do multiple work in progresses. So I'm going to do a maximum of 3 work in progresses. So I've already done 1. In a couple of months, I'm going to do number 2, where I wrote new material at the beginning of the show, some material from the first work in progress, and some material at the bottom. And then the third one will be improved even further. Now, what I'm doing to enhance this is that because I'm still trying to work out what is my comedy persona, right? I want to be alternative. I want to be your Rick Mail. I want to be your Ed Edmondson. I want to be your Monty Python. I want to be your Frankie Monroe. I want to be this sort of alternative world where it's like, that's really absurd, Harry Hill type thing. You know what I mean? So what I'm doing on that front is developing this skill, going, well, yeah, I want to improve, but I want to improve in this new way. So this second work in progress is going to be about, well, what am I doing differently? How am I going to make that different? How am I going to use my comic style and what I like in comedy? How am I going to represent that in this new version of the work in progress? Because even though it might sound like a dramatic shift from the first show, the first version of the show, it's just going to be me developing and improving the idea to make it the best that it can be. So, there we have it. That is the topic of my stand-up journey and work in progress. I'd still do the mini stand-up gigs. It's the thing I'm not very good at, is working out what names to call the mini stand-up gigs. Because when you go to a comedy club, you don't have a name for your set, but because I'm releasing them to YouTube, I then have that problem. So, what we're going to do now is going to move on to talk about my comedy characters. Now, since I've been recording this on audio, if you've probably heard in the background of this, that I decided to attempt to film a bit of the podcast in my Twitch, like stand-up live setup, because I use a website called an app called OBS. So I'm thinking that could work, and I got inspired to do that by talking about the fact that this was going to be an audio-only episode. But then I thought, oh, I can try that. But I wanted to make this more interesting. I wanted to make this more exciting, if you will. I wanted to add a new element, not just me rambling, because that's what I do on my other podcast, Chatterbox, over on the third channel, The Weird Side. But let's head over to the visual world to hear about my history with comedy characters and what's happening with them now. Hello, and welcome to part 2 of this comedy podcast, Comedy Breakdown. We're now in the visual realm of a video camera, so you can now see me if you're watching this on YouTube and on Spotify. To catch it on YouTube, it's Tom's Comedy Club. To catch it on Spotify, it's Comedy Breakdown. Or if you really want a quicker way of looking at it, it's tommason.uk, lowercase t, lowercase m, no space, /podcast. Now we're going to be talking about comedy characters. And a few years ago, I thought to myself, I really like Alan Partridge and other comedy characters in that same, like Lyndon Baptiste, Barry from Watford, and so forth and so on. And I really like Garth Marenghi. That's another one. I really like what they do. And I thought, well, I can create my own. So I made a sitcom called The Misadventures of Albert Farpot. At that time, I had a problem, and I'm sort of working my way through this, where when I created a sort of comic voice, okay, that, I could probably not do that again, and that's my issue. So I couldn't do that again. So if I try that now, again, or again, I wouldn't be able to do it again. So I had to find a voice that I could do over and over again. So I found, hello, it's me, Albert Flopper. Yay! It's Albert Flopper. And that voice I could do over and over and over again. Hello, hello. It does make you cough after a while. So if you've got a cold, that's a dreadful thing to try and attempt to do, because it makes it a lot harder to do. So what I discovered was I struck gold. I found a voice I could do. I found a comedy character that involved in this sitcom that I can then take anywhere. But I can also utilize inspiration to send it to other places. And to aid in that sort of world, I can go, right, okay. So what am I going to do now? And the second series was more of a mockumentary, if you will. Not really, but I sort of prefaced it as a mockumentary. And I wrote a book called The Wild Adventures of Dave the Duck. And it was supposed to be this incredible book. But the problem I was having, out of the sitcom world, was that it was too short for self-publishing. So I developed it more, and I'm developing more, and I've decided to send that outwards to the world. So it's still in development, the book, but I just don't think it'll be self-published. That isn't the route I'm going to be going down with this book. I'm not going to self-publish it. So and with that, I'm learning that what has Steve Coogan and the team done to sell the Alan Partridge book will make it clear that Steve Coogan and all the other people that work with Steve Coogan at the moment sort of are credited on the front cover. So it says Alan Partridge in bold, and then it says the name of the writer underneath. So for me, it'll say Albert Falpot, and then it'll have like also written by Tom Mason or whatever. So I'll come to that when I get to that problem. But on the audiobook, as I love to do an audiobook, it'll be Albert Falpot doing the audiobook. Now, I thought, well, Albert Falpot's a cracking idea, brilliant, excellent. I like him. I did him in a sitcom, which was the Misadventure of Albert Falpot. Then he went on to, because I was then creating a series on my main channel, Tom Mason, a Doctor Who fan series. So I needed a sort of avenue to get the character. Well, I didn't need an avenue involve the character. I wanted something unique for my fan series. So I added the Dream Lord, who's played by Tommy Jones in the TV show, was dreams and in his head. So I had the Dream Lord inside my doctor's head. I had the mask trapped in an iPad, so I would film the scene and then film the iPad. But then I needed something else, so I had a narrator. But I had Albert Falpot, and in the origins of the character, he was trying to get back into the limelight. So we've got Albert Falpot doing the narration for a fan series called Doctor Who Earthbound. So Albert Falpot does the narration for that. That meant that I had another angle to play back with the character. Then I tried him out on my college radio, but it was at the time when I wasn't too sure on the voice. So I did him briefly, then I just sort of like sacked him off and then brought in original characters to that. I then gave him his own podcast in a similar vein to the Alan Partridge podcast, and gave him his own university radio show on my university radio station that lasted an episode due to the fact that I had a cold at the time and I just didn't think it worked well enough. So I developed it over time, and more comedy character type shows I watch, the more I learn. And Albert Falbert's done stand up comedy now, hopefully more. I've got some other projects in the timeline, in the pipeline that are in work. So because I've got some avenues to send the character further afield from just YouTube and Twitch and podcasts, there's an element that I created in the podcast that I've utilised in another project that now, because that project is going around, doing its rounds and busy elsewhere, I can't now use elements of that because story-wise, it needs to be entered in those projects before I start utilizing it. So at the moment when I had Albert Farmer do a Christmas speech twice, that was he can briefly mention these snippets, but he can't really say too much of them due to the projects I want to do with them elements. The element I'm talking about here, and as you probably can gather if you listen to the Albert Farmer Pop universe, it's dimension hopping because that in itself has become complicated because I'm sending projects utilizing that as aspects. So there's a project floating around where it's the origins of the dimension hopping, but it's sort of in a sense of it's it's sort it will explain a lot more of some of the other aspects I want to use in the future for Albert Pop. So can't really use the dimension hopping stuff at the moment, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to get that back if those projects don't go anywhere. I'll be able to get that element back and then utilize it because we've got some excellent stand-up material for Albert Pop to use with this dimension hopping and how I sort of showcase it because I don't have the budget to do something incredible, but I've got ways of showcasing it. So Albert Farpots had its gaps in between and I'm currently working on another YouTube project for Albert. So he's got two non-YouTube projects and one upcoming YouTube project that's going to mix the world of audio and visual in a sense of yes, it'll be a sitcom, but the first episode will be about the fact that he thinks he's filming this discussion, this show, and this thing, but turns out the camera was never recording, so he only has the audio recordings, and he sort of has to work out what to do next. So the first episode will be audio only, not like I said here, where it was going to be audio only. Then, whilst I was talking, I had the inspiration of creating the visual element in Chile. So overall, I think there's avenues for him. But then at the same time, I then decided to create other comedy characters for other comedy ventures, such as I'm gonna list them off: Bingo Bob, Doctor Digby Space. I'm gonna remember the names now. I've created a lot. Ian W. Smith, who is my brand new comedy character. Now, Ian W. Smith was born out of the fact that I watched Rowan Atkinson on the most recent Graham Norton appearance, and I was really inspired by the physicality of Mr. Bean and the physicality of Rowan Atkinson. So I thought, I want to create a comedy character that's really into Doctor Who, loves Doctor Who, but is really, like, doesn't say much because he's nervous in Shebang. He's nervous, he doesn't say much, he's sort of freaked out a lot, but he really loves the avenue of physicality, so he walks weird, like, wow, stretches his legs out, moves his arms, like, hello, hello. And then I had to find other aspects, giving him really small hat works really well, and all this avenue. So that's sort of in development in the sense that I've done two things with Ian W. Smith, but I want to develop that more to see if it's worth it. I sort of see my other comedy characters as Alan Partridge. So C. Coogan did a show called Alan Partridge and his other unsuccessful friends, right? Less successful friends than you call. So I'm taking Albert Thorpe as my Alan Partridge, if you will, my main source of comedy character. But I have these others where I'm experimenting and talking about some Bingo Bob is the second. It goes Albert Thorpe or Bingo Bob because Bingo Bob is a bingo caller who loves Doctor Who. So he's done a lot of videos slash films on Tom Mason about his love of Doctor Who. And he's now got his own Doctor Who based podcast where he can talk about Doctor Who as much as he likes. Now his Bingo Bob, unlike Albert Flowerpot, Bingo Bob has a voice that so that's roughly around the same voice I'm not really 100% sure I can do. So what I've done is I've recorded what I wanted the voice to be at the end of that, right? because I've eventually found the voice I think I'm happy with, and I've got that recorded so that I can then go off and go, right, okay, so that's the comedy voice. I now need to record it so that I can, just before I press record on my next album, next Bingo Bob stuff, I can go, hello, 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 hello. Try and make sure I get the voice perfect, because that's the tricky bit, right? That's what's really tricky about doing comedy characters is if you struggle to do voices, you sort of have to then go, right, okay, so now I need to find a new version of that voice. I need to go, right, so that's a good voice, but how do I make that voice even better? And that's the bit I'm trickily doing, and that's the bit I'm currently practicing. So, if you like, so the comedy character world is slowly coming to right. So Dr. Digsby Space, um, Bingo Bob, and Ian W. Smith haven't done any comedy on Tom's Comedy Club, but will do in the future. They're just sort of developing their Doctor Who fascination in the world Doctor Who. DCI Gone Mad did stand up over in Tom's Comedy Club, but I'm not too sure if I want to bring him back. I think he was a little bit. And there's a lot of others. Mr. Who is another one. They're all like Doctor Who based comedy characters that where I love Doctor Who and I wanted to do more comedy in the world of Doctor Who, but at the same time I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just going overboard in the sense of, yeah, I'm gonna do comedy, I can only do comedy on that channel, so I want to make sure I've got some Doctor Who based comedy. Now on my website, tommason.uk, we can have a look at reminding myself of all the names. I've done slightly too many. Ian W. Smith isn't on here yet. So the comedy characters, other than Albert Flowerpot, are DCI Gone Mad, Bingo Bob, Mr. Who, Dr. Digby Space, and Ian W. Smith. Now, Ian W. Smith originally started out life as Mr. Smith, and then I thought that doesn't work. Then he was Ian Smith, but that didn't work. Then he was Ian Who Smith. Even on my computer, he's described as Ian Who Smith, and then I thought, too long of a title, so Ian W. Smith. So he's got Who in his middle name. He's a massive Doctor Who fan. So Bingo Bob is going to have his own comedies and sitcoms and all sorts. But at the moment, I'm sort of developing Itchy Back. I'm developing the character within the world of his podcast, where he's going to discuss how he's got his love of Doctor Who merged together with his love of bingo calling, because he's a bingo caller, on his own, number one. Yeah. And so, there we have it. As we draw a close to this episode, we like to announce something that hasn't been announced anywhere yet. My production company, TGM, and I have been working. I am the creator of TGM Production, which is my production company. TGM is the name of the production company. We produce all sorts. We've been making. We made this podcast. We make podcasts, YouTube channels where we do sitcoms, sketch shows, dramas, documentaries, short films, discussion videos, reviews, all sorts. And then we're also working on some stuff for broadcast media. But well, I'm not really gonna talk too much about them because they're TGM and that's not this space, but that's what it says on my website. So what I doing currently that we're in the middle of, I think I'm on the second one, is I am personally working on a brand new comedy musical album. And before anyone asks, no, I can't sing, but I'm doing it as more as spoken word. So I'm not going to announce what the album's called yet, but the album, from what I can gather, will have 8 tracks on it, 8 songs. And I'm currently working on the third song before I then go back and readjust them. So where I'm working, because this is the first time I've ever made music with lyrics, you can see my other musical endeavors on tommason.uk/music, because that's where I actually store all the music. I haven't actually made music videos for them. So I'm going to make all these 8 songs and then go back and listen to them going, I tweet that there, tweet that there, tweet that there, and then release it on Bandcamp, because that is the best platform for this. And the whole section you can use it on pretty sure that it's a worthwhile platform. That's my comedy album coming soon, and to make it worthwhile, I will do as many music videos for that comedy album on Tom's Comedy Club as well. So, thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to the first episode of Comedy Breakdown, my comedy podcast where I discuss my comedy journey and break it down so that it's transparent and I can sort of explain some of the things that I want to learn about. I want to learn more about doing work in progresses. I want to learn more avenues in the world of stand-up comedy. And it's where I can tell you all the things I'm up to in the world of comedy whilst entertaining and exploring this world as a beginner and as someone that's been a fan of comedy for years and is trying to do everything to passion to match my love of Doctor Who, my love of Blue Peter, my love of Slutty, my love of Taskmaster, all in one to utilise the comedy world. So, there we have it. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.